ever ordered something online, and then like stopped to think about the journey it took to actually reach your doorstep?
Hmm.
Well, we're doing that today. We're diving into a world most people don't think about, the kind of complex network of labor agreements that keep cargo ships moving and all that, all the goods flowing through our ports.
It's interesting, because something as like mundane as a labor contract can actually have huge ripple effects throughout the entire economy.
Absolutely. That's precisely why we're breaking down this one, the USMX ILA Master Contract.
Right.
That might just sound like industry jargon, but trust me, the ins and outs of this agreement impact you, like everything from your groceries, what you pay for groceries, to the future of work itself.
Yeah. Think of this deep dive as a like a crash course in the backbone of global trade, where we're going to unpack the world of maritime labor relations.
We're talking about the United States Maritime Alliance, those are the employers, and the International Longshoremen's Association, and that's the union for thousands of workers at all the major ports on the East and Gulf coasts. So this isn't like a small town deal or anything.
Yeah.
This agreement covers everything from Maine down to Texas.
And the timing of this is perfect. This 2018 contract, it's set to expire September 30th, 2024,
Oh.
which means they're probably working on a new one right now as we speak.
So while we're going through the details of this agreement, we're also going to be getting a really valuable look into what we might see in the news in the coming weeks and months. It's like we're giving you a decoder ring kind of for the future U.S. ports.
Exactly. We're going to figure out who the people involved are, what are the major issues and what might happen to workers, businesses, and, people like you.
All right, first things first, let's meet the players here. On one side, we have USMX.
Right.
They're the ones representing the employers, the shipping companies, terminal operators, the folks, paying the bills.
And on the other side, we have the ILA. They're batting for the workers.
Right.
This union represents everyone, the longshoremen loading and unloading the ships, the clerks, the checkers. They keep track of all the containers, even the maintenance crews, making sure things run smoothly.
It's a lot of people, spread across a huge area. And this agreement dictates all their employment terms. Pretty crazy.
Yeah, and that's a lot of power concentrated in this one agreement.
Okay, so let's talk money,
Yeah.
This agreement, signed back in 2018, included a $1 raise every year starting October 1st. Pretty straightforward.
But it also introduced this two-tier wage system, which basically means new hires make less per hour than people who were employed before this contract started.
You've probably never even thought about the rules for how your phone gets off a cargo ship, but that's what this contract is for,
Right.
It just dictates it all. So let's get into the part about wages. Imagine working the same job as someone but making less money.
Yeah,
Talk about tension.
exactly. It's a tough situation, this two-tier system. On one hand, it makes U.S. ports more competitive because labor costs are lower, which could attract more business, right? But it could also create a system where some workers are treated differently, leading to resentment, low morale, even lower productivity. It's tough.
And it's more than just how much they get paid per hour. This contract also has all these benefits and how they're different depending on location.
Yeah, it's pretty complex how they vary.
We're talking $14 an hour towards pensions, welfare funds, all the stuff you'd expect in a union contract.
Of course, retirement and healthcare are important for the union and its members.
Right.
You want to make sure everyone is taken care of long term.
And then there's MILA, their own healthcare fund, with a separate $5 an hour contribution. So healthcare costs were definitely a big deal when they made this agreement.
Absolutely. Healthcare is so expensive. This fund shows how important affordable healthcare is for these workers.
And there's more. They also have this separate money purchase plan, which is like a retirement savings plan, but with its own set of rules. It all depends on the port, too.
This is a perfect example of how even with this one big contract, things can be really different depending on the location.
Yeah, kind of like a choose-your-own-adventure, depending on where you're working.
Right. Different ports, different benefits. But okay, so we've talked about who this agreement covers and the money stuff, but what about the work itself? There's a whole section called work rules, and that's where it gets really interesting.
It all comes down to, who has the power, the union or the employers. Who decides what tasks belong to the ILA?
Right.
And which ones can be done by someone else or even automated?
So they really tried to plan for everything and make a rule for it. Well, yeah, and it's a big deal for both sides. For workers, it's about protecting their jobs in an industry that's always changing, right?
Yeah.
And for the companies, it's about, saving money, being efficient, and being able to compete with everyone else.
Makes sense. Huge stakes. So, What are some of the actual rules in this section? What do they have to figure out?
Okay, so there's this thing called flex time. The contract says that terminals have to have some kind of flex time for when containers, those big metal boxes, are delivered.
Sure.
So basically when they're receiving and delivering those containers.
So they don't want a bunch of ships stuck waiting because everyone's trying to unload at the same time, right?
Yeah. But the contract doesn't say what the flex time hours should be.
Oh, really?
Those are decided locally between each port and the ILA chapter there.
So, like, New York could have different flex time rules than Alabama.
Exactly. Because different ports have different needs, different ways of working. The main contract is just a framework.
Okay.
And then the local people figure out the rest.
It's like a national agreement, but with a local spin on it. Okay, what else did they include in these work rules?
Well, remember gang size from earlier? Back in the 90s, the union agreed to have fewer workers on these gangs. Those are the teams loading and unloading cargo.
Right.
And that's been a big issue ever since.
Because fewer people on a gang means fewer jobs.
Yeah, exactly. The companies say that smaller gangs are more efficient and cheaper, especially with all the new technology.
Which we'll get into later because automation is a huge topic.
Oh, yeah, for sure. But this gang size thing is still a big deal in the negotiations.
Like a wound that never fully heals.
Exactly. And then you have all these other rules. They sound boring, but they're really important, Like the contract says there has to be one checker per gang. The checker is the one who inspects all the cargo and makes sure it's all there.
Okay. Makes sense. Got to keep track of everything.
Yeah. But it gets even more specific, like how many people are needed to pack and unpack the containers, how should things be stacked, even what to do with damaged stuff.
Wow. So much goes into making sure those ships keep moving.
It's like a dance, and these rules are like the steps everyone has to follow.
And this work rules section, it might not sound exciting, but it's actually super important. All these little details can really affect how efficient a port is.
Right.
And that affects all of us in the end. Speaking of which, let's move on to something we've mentioned a few times, jurisdiction. And when we say jurisdiction is a battleground, we mean it. This is where things get serious in this contract.
It really is. This isn't just about what happens on the docks anymore. It's about, the ILA trying to stay relevant and protect its members.
Right.
Especially in an industry that's changing so quickly because of technology.
So give us the details. Where are we seeing this fight for control happening?
Well, look at the containerization agreement in this contract. It basically says that companies can't just outsource work to other companies, especially non-union ones, if that work has always been done by ILA members.
So they're trying to protect their workers, right?
Yeah.
But in a global economy, that must be hard when companies are always trying to save money and be more efficient.
Exactly. And it's even harder with all this new technology coming out.
Right.
The more machines can do, the harder it is for workers to keep their jobs.
Which brings us to automation.
Yeah.
This 2018 contract, it was negotiated right when all this new technology was coming out for the shipping industry.
Yeah.
How do they handle that?
It's a great question. And this contract actually addresses it, but it's a little vague.
Yeah.
The biggest example is the part that says no fully automated terminals are allowed during the contract period.
So that sounds good for the workers, right? Their jobs are safe.
It seems that way. But the contract doesn't actually define what fully automated means.
Oh, I see.
So how much human involvement is okay before a terminal is considered automated? It's unclear, which means there could be arguments about it.
So even though they made a rule, it's still open to interpretation. What else did they do about automation?
They created something called the New Technology Committee. It's a group with members from both the union and the employers.
So they're at least talking about it.
Yes. And the fact that this committee exists shows they know they can't ignore technology. Their job is to look at any new technology before it's used at a port. And they're supposed to make sure workers are protected.
So like retraining programs for workers who might lose their jobs because of automation.
Right. It's about trying to use new technologies without hurting workers. But are these measures enough? Is this just a temporary solution, or will it actually protect their jobs long term? That's what they're trying to figure out right now as we speak, because this contract is expiring soon.
And that's what makes this so interesting, right? We're not just looking at an old contract.
Right.
We're seeing the issues that are being debated right now. What happens in these negotiations is a big deal. It affects everyone, not just people who work at the ports.
Exactly. So pay attention to the news. Will they keep the two-tier wage system? How are they going to handle automation and protect jobs? There are no easy answers. But if you understand what's happening, you'll understand the impact of whatever agreement they come to.
It's all connected, the ships, the trucks delivering packages, everything. This look into this one contract has shown us how complex global trade is. We've learned about technology, worker rights. It's a lot to think about, and it's still happening right now. So the next time you see a news story about a port or new technology at a harbor, think about what we talked about. You'll be surprised how much more you understand about how everything works.